Alright, it's a center game. Modern players. Both players are grandmasters, but I can't pronounce their names. So, this is the main line. As you see in other games. It's the 1800s. Alright, so this lineup with the rook against the queen, unpleasant for white. This is the modern preference. Lets this pawn go, pawn sacrifice. Black could take with the knight. Black could take with the rook. Black doesn't have to take. Doesn't take in this game, plays d6. So now white supports the pawn with f3. So we have king castle on opposite side, which means pawn storm is normal strategy. Idea of pawn storm is to trade the pawns in front of the enemy king and open up lines for your rooks. So what you want to do with pawn storm, if you achieve open lines for your rook to access the enemy king, that's a successful pawn storm. Here it begins. The h pawn moves up. Pins the knight and makes a passive sacrifice. We saw this in the Winauer-Steinitz game, except for that game it was a knight on g5. So you can just leave the bishop here, be a passive sacrifice. If black takes back, have an open file. Knight goes d5, attacks the queen, and the f6 knight. Black trades. So this pin is very useful. Knight cannot take it. Well, what happens if he takes it? Anyways. Check open file. Knight's attacked, so knight h7. They just play queen h4. He cannot defend h7 again. Queen h7 is mate. This is just one move longer. So the bishop wasn't doing much on b4, so on c5 it's centralized. Controls a d4 square and potential for bishop e3 check. So king moves to white square. King b1's a normal preparation move. King's a little bit safer on b1 than c1 because there's no open diagonal to it. Second, there's no white squared bishop, so the king's safer on white squares than on black. Now Kapir says best move for black is knight e5. The idea is knight goes to d7 to reinforce f6. Knight could also go to g6 to defend the king side. It's just more active on e5. Also cuts the rook off from going to the king side. So knight e6 is a clear mistake. He loses time with his queen. Knight f4 hits the queen. Now black could have played bishop e3 check if the king was still in c1, but it's not, so he has to go back with his queen. So right now, black just lost two moves. He played queen e6, queen e7. But his queen was on e7 earlier. So he just spent two moves to get back where he was at before. So black can use the time to wreck the black king side. Creates a breach in the king's pawn shield. So he is trying to hold it with the bishop. Attacking in with the knight. Now eventually end up with doubled f pawns. So normal strategy is try and trade off all the attackers that you can. Now right here, if white wanted to, he could play knight c7 and get pawn and rook for his knight. But the attack is winning, so he just chooses the attack. And now the black king side is very weak. Double isolated pawn, h6 especially being weak. But he throws in a very nice move here, bishop c4. It's a great move because it adds another attacker with tempo. Again, black captured it. If he doesn't capture, he retreats. Now the queen's available to guard it, h6. So, for instance, this. Now, the extra piece, you can play bishop f7. The idea of bishop f7 would be the queen captures. No. It's a mate pattern. Two moves. Queen h6, queen h8. Standard pattern here. The rook go to e5. Try and trade off. White's winning here because he's up material and the black king's very weak. But this allows him to trade a little bit. So it's better to just play g4. Continue the pawn storm. this pawn can't move now, so g5 will happen, and this h-pawn will fall. For example, it's a good idea variation. So now, white's a pawn up, but I like this thematic move, g6. It's going to get rid of all the pawns near the enemy king, be completely exposed. I like this one, very thematic, getting this rook to join. So, would it be a thematic line? Maybe f takes e4. Lots of wins here for white. Let's try this check. I like this finish, bishop check. Queen checkmate. I guess he doesn't have to take it. But now we see the result of the pawn storm. Look at all those open files. Wow. That's awesome. Nice pawn storm. Alright. So he takes the bishop on c4. Now it's queen and rook attacking king. And only this little pawn that's isolated. He can't hold it though. Now he's threatening queen h6, queen h8 mate. Black cannot stop it. This rook can't stop it. Knight can't stop it. He has no counterplay. It's all done with checks. I guess a thematic. Wow. I don't know. Bring the knight over or something. This would be a finish. Queen h6, queen h8. Nice finish. That was a great game. Played by modern players, grandmasters. Still a valid line.